course, we are going to begin this morning with Vice President Kamala Harris's first major TV interview since becoming the Democratic presidential nominee. She and her running mate, Governor Tim Walz, sat down with CNN in the middle of their bus tour through Georgia. And during the interview, Harris spoke about her belief that Americans are ready for a, quote, new way forward.
When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward in a way that generations of Americans have been fueled by hope and by optimism. I think, sadly, in the last decade, we have had in the former president someone who has really been pushing an agenda and an environment that is about diminishing the character and the strength of who we are as Americans, really dividing our nation, and I think people are ready to turn the page on that.
Well, our Scott MacFarlane is joining us now with more on the interview. So, Scott, let's sort of dig in a little deeper into some of the things that she said. Harris took the time in this interview to explain, well, she was asked to explain some of her shifting policy positions, particularly on things like fracking and the border. I want to play a little of that sound.
My values have not changed. In 2020, I made very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. What I have seen is that we can grow and we can increase a thriving clean energy economy without banning fracking.
Okay.
I believe there should be consequence. We have laws that have to be followed and enforced that address and deal with people who cross our border illegally, and there should be consequences.
All right, and I think, you know, Dana, when it came to fracking, Dana Bash asked her, was there new information or new science that you were exposed to that maybe contributed to your current position? And I don't think she really had an answer there. I'm curious about what sort of reaction you're hearing from fellow Democrats about how she responded to these questions.
I think the broader reaction is most telling, Anne-Marie, that this is at this moment, kind of a calcified race where Vice President Harris has the unbridled support, including from the interview last night, of Democrats, and she's taking incoming criticism from Trump supporters in the Republican Party, and that didn't change after last night. No harm caused, no benefit yielded in terms of loosening up either side. That notwithstanding, the position she mentioned twice last night is that there was a calibration in her position on fracking that happened between 2019 and 2020, not between 2019 and today, that she had made it clear when she was campaigning with Joe Biden in 2020 that she did not support a fracking ban. That remains her position today. When asked about whether there was a shift in immigration views, she emphasized her backstory as a prosecutor in California, vocally and forcefully prosecuting crimes along the border. What's more, she said that it is a priority moving forward. I didn't see anything last night, nor have I seen from the reaction overnight and this morning, any indication views on the vice president inside her own party or from the opposing party have changed.
Okay. She also sort of batted away a question about the Trump campaign's assertion that she only just became black, that she's claiming being black now because it's convenient. I want to play some of that sound.
Same old tired playbook. Next question, please. That's it? That's it. Okay.
She could have said something like, I'm both, like many Americans, you know, but she said sort of next question. And we've talked a little bit about Harris kind of seeming to back away from identity politics. Can you give us a little insight into what you've been seeing with her campaign when it comes to this topic?
It's a pretty seminal moment in that interview, that exchange. And I could tell you her campaign really leaned into it because they issued this press release minutes after that clip aired in which she says the vice president is trying to turn the page on Trump. And the campaign statement says this is a campaign fueled by hope and by optimism. They emphasized that very brief exchange last night as clearly a pillar of the message of this campaign. I expect to see that replicated at future events. I expect to see that replicated in future interviews. But really the question that I think we're leading toward is, will she lean into that September 10th when she is face-to-face and side-by-side with Donald Trump on a debate stage?
Yeah, it ought to be interesting, Scott. Thank you. Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump was also on the trail campaigning in Michigan and Wisconsin, where he focused on women's reproductive care. Speaking to the crowd in Michigan, Trump laid out his policies for IVF and fertilization treatments. Here's what he said.
As part of our efforts to help working families, I'm announcing today in a major statement that under the Trump administration, your government will pay for, or your insurance company will be mandated to pay for, all costs associated with IVF treatment, fertilization for women, IVF treatment. Because we want more babies, to put it very nicely. And for this same reason, we will also allow new parents to deduct major newborn expenses from their taxes.
The CBS News campaign reporter Libby Cathey is joining us now with more on the Trump campaign. So, Libby, I think a lot of people were kind of surprised when he announced this IVF proposal because, among other things, it's really, really, really expensive, and he didn't sort of explain how something like that would be paid for. But we've spoken about how some of his rhetoric, both that he has used and his vice president has used, could be alienating a very important voting bloc, women, particularly suburban women. Is this, hearing about this IVF, is this part of an attempt to sort of woo this bloc?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, Anne-Marie. So former President Trump and Republicans know that abortion rights have been a losing issue for them ever since that Roe was overturned. And of course, former President Trump brags about how he appointed 3 of those justices that did overturn Roe. So knowing that this is a losing issue for them, knowing that every time this has been on the ballot before voters since the fall of Roe, that abortion rights advocates have won, he seems to be getting out ahead of this. Yesterday, making that announcement, you played that clip saying that under a second Trump administration, they would pay, the government or private insurance would pay for IVF. Now, Democrats and Kamala Harris's campaign say not so fast. Look at Trump's actions. What has he done to show that he would do this? And look at his running mate, Senator J.D. Vance. In June, Republicans had the chance to protect IVF access, to have private insurance, to have insurance pay for this, and J.D. Vance voted no. Only 2 Republican senators voted for that legislation, Anne-Marie.
Mm-hmm. So Trump's running mate, speaking of J.D. Vance, gave remarks to the International Association of Firefighters yesterday in Boston, where he's actually met with some not-so-happy union members. I want to play some sound.
President Trump and I are proud to be the most pro-worker Republican ticket in history, and I want to talk about why we're fighting for working people, why we're going to fight for unions and non-union alike. Now, our enemies and a lot of Democrats.
So, you know, people remember that the president of the Teamsters Union was at the RNC as well. Clearly, Republicans are working to win over the union vote, but that doesn't seem like a good sign.
No, it doesn't, Anne-Marie, but I will say that the Trump campaign would say there were plenty of people in that room who also do support a Trump-Vance ticket, that you may have heard some boos, but there's also supporters in that room. And then the day before, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Vice President Harris's running mate, also spoke to that union. Did seem to get a little bit more warm of a welcome. However, this firefighters union has not endorsed a candidate yet. So as you say, Trump and Vance are hoping to get that endorsement. But Senator Vance did make a point to say, even if we don't get it, we're going to be looking out for you. They're trying to make the argument that a Trump-Vance ticket would be better for unions. Of course, Democrats say that's not the case, and they look to how this union in 2020 endorsed Joe Biden, and they hope to get that endorsement again.
All right, so what's next for Donald Trump? What's on the schedule?
Yes, so 66 days till the election, but who's counting? Former President Trump knows this, and he will be in Pennsylvania later today holding a rally. He kind of hit the Rust Belt all this week, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, important states that he lost to Joe Biden last time around, trying to get back. And then after that rally in Pennsylvania, he will head down to Washington, D.C., where I am, for a Moms for Liberty summit, going to do a fireside chat with the founders of that group. And then it will be into Labor Day next week for more campaigning.
Moms for Liberty, a bit of a controversial group there. We'll see how that unfolds. Libby, great talking to you.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.